Made for Me, Chapter 57. 3.5 months later, 100,000 twinkling lights illuminated dozens of trees on Georgy's property. A late spring snowfall gave the scene an ethereal glow that made Danielle imagine fairies convening for an evening celebration. And that's what this was, a celebration for her and Andre. "Your mother went all out," Danielle said quietly. In the days and weeks and months that transpired since her conversation with Lars in the hospital, she had often recalled how he had described his love for his client's wife and his own wife. He loved them both, but differently and for slightly different reasons. It was the same experience for her, but with only one man was she having a baby. Andre's glacier blue eyes penetrated her thoughts. "Are you still feeling okay?" he asked. This man, the one who had captured her heart first, was going to be her husband, and this was the engagement party. "I'm nervous," she admitted. And of course, she was ready to give birth any day, which only contributed to her insecurity. "Don't worry, the whole family is here embracing you and loving you, but not as much as me." He reinforced his words by placing an arm around her waist. "I hope so, because there's nothing private and intimate about a gathering for 250 people. Danielle touched the eternity ring on her right hand as her thoughts filled with past memories. Her father's words came to her then. "Everyone has remembrances and past loves. Use them. Build upon them. Fill your heart and then add more." Danielle looked at Andre. He had grown and matured in ways she'd never expected in the last few months. One day, he told her he'd moved out of his apartment and purchased a home near his father, a smaller and more modern version with a view of the water. At first, she'd cynically thought he bought it to buy his way back into her life, but, as if anticipating her reaction, had told her if she were going to visit with the baby, he wanted the two of them to be comfortable. Andre had also rearranged his schedule for work, electing to spend less time on the water and more time in the office. That had shocked her more than buying a home. Andre loved the water, as much as being on his motorcycles or more. "I told you I wanted to be involved," he had explained to her. The ultrasounds were during the day, and he wasn't going to be on a boat and miss the early stages of the baby's development. He also had little desire to work on the weekends, a time reserved for families and shopping, not entertaining strangers. The most significant change related to her career. Danielle had been waiting for Andre to tell her to stop working, stay home, and raise the child and allow him to provide. She waited and waited, but the conversation never came up, and so she continued as normal. As Danielle's heart had softened, she couldn't resist raising the topic herself, asking if his opinion on the matter had changed. "Actually, no," he told her, catching her off guard and causing her pulse to spike. "What I mean is that providing for you and you stopping work had nothing to do with anything but you being sued. It wasn't about my desire to have you stay at home without reason. I love your passion for what you do. I wouldn't want you to slow down or give up what you've spent your career building just because you're having a child." "You mean you really don't expect or want me to stay home?" Andre applied the modest, careful demeanor he'd exhibited early in their relationship. "I want to be really clear on this one, Danielle. I don't have any expectations, and that's not the way I look at our relationship. What I want is for you to be happy and satisfied. If that means you hire a nanny or enlist my mom in order to go back to work full-time, and that will make you happy, I support it. But what would your preference be?" He shook his head, unwilling to be led down a dead-end path. "Honestly, I want you to take all the time off allowed by your company, to rest and take it easy." 6 months off is a long time," Danielle contended. "Only compared to the States. Some companies here give a full year, but when it comes to you, determine your own preference. Who knows? You may get completely bored and want to start working part-time early. Either way, I'd like you to not feel rushed or bound by some notion that it's going to make a difference, because it won't. Not for me." Andre's attitude about leaving the decision to work in her hands released the last bit of hesitation she'd had towards fully trusting and loving him. When that happened, their renewed relationship had sprung to life with the staying power necessary to talk of a life after the baby. Only then did she feel that she wasn't losing by not being with Lars and experiencing all they could have been together. She looked at Andre now. He filled her heart, and Lars, he would eventually find someone to take her place and have the family he deserved. Danielle touched her ring one last time. I think I'm ready to go in now. She was content and at peace. Andre was smiling, his arm around her back, laughing at one of Max's comments when he leaned over to her and said he'd be right back. She watched him head directly for Lars, who was speaking with Georgy. Her heart stopped and then started again. Of course Lars would be here. He'd known Georgy many years before Danielle had entered his world. Georgy left soon after Andre joined them. Danielle tried to concentrate on what Max was saying, but her eyes kept darting back between her two loves. Lars was listening as Andre spoke, his face neutral but engaged, his eyes and mouth serious. A moment later, his features changed. He nodded his head once then, his eyes darting to hers, where they connected for a brief second, and then Andre turned to her as well. For a moment, both men observed her before they turned away and resumed their discussion. Are they going to get into a fight? Max asked under his breath. Danielle shook her head. I don't think so. Unexpectedly, Lars laughed. Andre put his hand out and Lars shook it, clasping his shoulder. Then it was over. Lars moved down the long hallway, picking up a glass of champagne from a server. That evening, when she was relaxing on the couch in her flat, Andre rubbed her feet and told her about the conversation with Lars. I sincerely thanked him for his ability to think of you throughout this entire situation. He's behaved in a manner that's pretty damn unbelievable. To be honest, I don't know if I could have done the same had I been in love with you as much as he is. Of all the people to have fallen in love with Danielle, Lars was a good one. Danielle smiled at him. I do have amazing taste. I ended by wishing him the best at finding someone as perfect as you. That was when he looked over at you and said, it's pretty hard to improve upon perfect. I looked at you and agreed. We shook hands and I wished him the best, and he did the same. Lars's words meant for her and her alone. Love rushed through her again, but without the pain of loss and heartache. At that moment, she felt a kick inside her. Was it a good one? Andre asked, placing his hands on either side of her belly, covering half of her palm, his fingers on top of the ring Lars had given her. Yes, and are you ready to tackle the name subject again? They had gone round and round, never finding quite the right run. No, not really, she responded. His eyes gleamed bright. It's been right in front of us this whole time. Oh, really? She asked. Yes, we've been looking at it all wrong. Instead of coming up with a name that means something, I'm thinking it should be a name that defines our relationship and also really American, in honor of your father and your roots. Danielle expressed skepticism that anything could symbolize both, but Andre gave her a look of pure satisfaction. Monroe. Danielle's hand covered her mouth and her eyes blurred. She nodded her head, embracing him. Their little girl would have the name memorializing where they met and Andre's love for all things American, including her. It's perfect, she whispered, just like our life is going to be. Danielle smiled, her heart full. She felt a kick and decided that Monroe had given her acceptance of the name. Then another kick came. She really likes it, Andre said, smiling. Then there was a kick along with pain. Ouch, Danielle said. I don't think that was a kick. It felt more like a push. She looked at Andre and he looked at Beck. They waited in silence, wondering if now was the time. Danielle felt a rolling movement of pain, starting at the top of her belly all the way down to her navel. Andre, I think Monroe is ready to join us. He threw his arms around her, gave her a tremendous hug, and leapt up. I'm ready to be a family. So am I.